Yadagaba, Yama Gardnea, Yarada, Berent, Yualarai Gamilaroi, Dinawan Malian, Girabiri Dirimbandi D. Naya Yala Gidmaga, Winanayi, Nanawal Nambi, Wale, Dangaga, Nalu, Wale, Ba, Nale, Budu, Gagiga. Good evening, everyone. I'm Larissa Berent, and with Auntie Matilda's blessing to speak my language on her country, in my Yualarai language, I paid respects to the Ngunnawal and Ngambri peoples whose lands we gather on for this very special occasion. I'm your MC this evening, and it's my privilege to take you through events tonight. So thank you all for joining us here in person and online for this historic and exciting event, the launch of the first ever Institute for First Nations Women and Girls and the Wiyi Yani Thangani Change Agenda for First Nations Gender Justice, the first national framework to set out our First Nations women's goals and aspirations for change determined by us. I'd like, of course, to acknowledge the woman of the hour, or the 2 hours, our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Social Justice Commissioner, June Oscar AO, former Prime Minister, the Honourable Julia Gillard AC, the Honourable Linda Burney, and ANU President and Vice-Chancellor Genevieve Bell AO, who we will be hearing from later this evening, as well as the women who've travelled all the way from Roebourne, Western Australia, to provide us with an artistic sharing of Punkuli Ara tonight. I welcome and acknowledge all First Nations women, including all cis, transgender women, sister girls and non-binary mob, who have made the Wiyi Yani Thangani project what it is. This work is grounded in your voices, and the Wiyi Yani Thangani Institute and Change Agenda for First Nations Gender Justice is for all of you. Lastly, I welcome and acknowledge the many wonderful men and non-Indigenous supporters and collaborators in the room and online who too have made tonight possible. But to start our night, I'd like to acknowledge and invite Dr. Auntie Matilda House to the stage to welcome us to her country. Many of you will have had the opportunity to know Auntie Matilda because of her enormous work in the local community. So I thank you, Auntie Matilda, for being here, and if we can extend a welcome to her and invite her onto the stage.
I'm always directing the traffic around here. Haven't changed, but hey, I want to say what a wonderful, wonderful day to be here, evening, to be with so many firsts. The first woman ever to be Prime Minister, Julia Gillard. The first woman to be a social justice, our beautiful woman there. And to all of those ladies who have been first, you all are first in my book. I'm also a first. I was the first ever to do a welcome for the 42nd sitting of Parliament House for Kevin Rudd with his sorry. So there you go. You can clap. Go on. I'm wearing my beautiful possum tonight. The possums never suffered here. They all come from New Zealand. But you know, I love them, and I still keeping the culture alive. So all the young ones and the others, boys and girls, please keep culture alive, because this is what it's all about tonight, to share right through our communities, our culture, our well-being. And I want to say to June Oscar, the first, the wonderful things that I've known and how she has brought things into my life. And another lady, a first ever to be at the Jabal Centre, Dr. Anne Martin. Where are you, Anne? Give her a clap. Come on, come on. Don't be too frightened to bless our people who have been there. And for Larissa to be here today, watched her grow up, running around, but look what she is today. So, Larissa, you're great. And to all our aunties that are here tonight, look at them. You drew a big crowd there, June Oscar. You did. Wonderful young women and women of all places who have come here for this tonight to cherish and to be here to be heard for the wonderful things that'll be up here tonight on this stage. You know, we walk a lot and we think that nobody notices how we travel. My wonderful, wonderful great-great-grandmother, her name was Wandong, you know, Wallenbean, a lady that taught my grandmother. And that goes back so long of how women have been and looking after camps. I grew up on a little Aboriginal mission, would you believe it was called Hollywood, not far from here. Dead opposite the cemetery. Loved it. I knew all the priests and nuns that died. I can say their names just like that. But it was a sad time, growing up on an Aboriginal reserves, which I grew off on too. So I was pretty lucky to have a wonderful mother, aunties and grandparents, grandmothers and aunties. And my beautiful sisters that stood by me, had my back. I'll let you go now to enjoy this beautiful evening with you, June. Look after everything for me, because I might just go home. I'm getting tired. I never met so many Yankees in my life today. Fair income. I never seen so many Yankees. They were going like that, you know, and I can't believe it. And I watched every one of them grow up too. So it's lovely to have families still around us. Enjoy this evening and welcome to the beautiful land of my ancestors, wonderful Ngambri people. I'm a really proud Ngambri woman of the Wiradjuri Nation. Wonderful. In Jamara, as we say. As my boy Stan says, in Jamara. And Paul, my other son. Have a great evening there, lady. I love you all. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Dr. Auntie Matilda, and the way that you have looked over us as we've grown up, so many of us in the community, is really a testament to the sort of women's leadership that we're celebrating tonight. We deeply appreciate your welcome to country and the generosity with which you share your wisdom and your land. The Wiyi Yani Thangani Institute and Change Agenda are the culmination of conversations, advocacy, research and work with thousands of First Nations women and stakeholders, including governments, not-for-profit and private organisations since 2017. These conversations told us that First Nations women and girls want to see a genuine mechanism for our representation that legitimises our diversity and affirms our identities. The Institute, which we are here to launch tonight, is a direct result of these conversations and has evolved from a key recommendation of the Wiyi Yani Thangani Securing Our Rights, Securing Our Future report in 2020. Tonight, we celebrate our own institute with a commitment to elevating our voices for national and global reach and impact. Sitting alongside the institute will be our change agenda, visually represented here as a grandmother tree, alive and nourishing and nourished by our knowledge systems, cultural practices and protocols. The change agenda is the measurement, evaluation and learning framework that sets out the guiding vision for gender, justice and equality and the outcomes for achieving this vision. It is written as a black print for transformation and is grounded in our voice, First Nations women, girls and gender diverse mob from across the continent. It also determines the focus and course of action for the Institute. The change agenda will predominantly live as an online dynamic document, evolving as our needs and aspirations do. But luckily, there are physical copies available tonight, and as I hope you have all seen around the foyer, on the banners, posters and stickers and cards, there are QR codes. The QR code is your gateway to accessing the change agenda, so I encourage you all to get your phones out and scan those codes and grab the stickers and posters and plaster them around your homes, workplaces and communities so that everyone can access it, own it and be a part of this movement for change. The Institute, although working in partnership with our women and communities, will have its physical home here on Ngunnawal and Ngambri country at the Australian National University, a fitting space to influence national decision-making and elevate our women's voices. Lastly, before I hand over to our first speakers, I'd like to thank all the launch and Institute partners. Special thanks to ANU for supporting the Institute and in particular Professor Peter Yu, Vice President for First Nations, and all his staff at the First Nations Portfolio, as well as Professor Michelle Ryan, Director of the Global Institute for Women's Leadership, and her colleague, Ms Natalie Barr, who have worked with the Social Justice team at the Australian Human Rights Commission to bring the Institute into being. A big thank you to the National Indigenous Australians Agency, who have been long-term partners in this work. Thanks to the Paul Ramsay Foundation for your contributions to the change agenda, Oxfam Australia, who have supported so many women to attend tonight, BHP Corporate for their generous donation to the Institute, and to Big Heart and Punkaliara for gifting such an incredible performance to tonight's launch. And lastly, a big thank you to the advisory group who've overseen this stage of the work and given their wisdom and expertise to the development of the change agenda. On behalf of the ANU, I'd like to now welcome the Honourable Ms Julie Bishop, Chancellor of the Australian National University, who unfortunately could not join us in person tonight, but has kindly prepared a video to share with us. And following her video message, I invite Professor Genevieve Bell, Vice-Chancellor and President of the Australian National University, to share her opening remarks for this evening.
Good evening. I'm sorry I cannot join you this evening, but I'm recording this at ANU on the lands of the Ngambri Ngunnawal people. And wherever you are, please join me in paying respects to elders past and present. My thanks to ANU Honorary Professor June Oscar for opening this auspicious event with me this evening. We're establishing this institute because First Nations women and girls have been underrepresented in decision-making spaces for far too long. In the wake of the Voice to Parliament referendum, it is urgent that we listen to First Nations women and work with them to address inequalities and help design the path towards a better, brighter and more inclusive future. As the first and only university established by the federal government, ANU has a mandate and a responsibility to influence policy on key issues. Supporting the development of national unity and identity, addressing inequality and contributing to social cohesion has always been an important part of our mission. The Wiyi Yani Institute will play a vital role in achieving these goals. Not only is the Institute a dedicated space for First Nations women and girls and the gender diverse, but it is also a continuation of the longest running First Nations Women and Girls project ever undertaken in Australia. For more than 7 years, thousands of women shared their voices as part of the Wiyi Yani project, creating a remarkable movement of First Nations gender justice and equality. The Institute will ensure that this movement continues to grow and gain momentum, putting Australia at the forefront of developing the level of First Nations-led research, policy and practice needed to achieve First Nations gender equality. The Institute will also work closely with Indigenous and non-Indigenous collaborators across the university, including our 7 academic colleges, the First Nations portfolio, the Global Institute for Women's Leadership, the Gender Institute and the Centre for Aboriginal Economic Policy and Research. Our ANU community is committed to listening and elevating the expertise of First Nations women, women who have the lived experience, knowledge and ideas to drive transformative agendas and create inclusive and sustainable systems that benefit us all. The establishment of this institute is an important step in Australia's journey to being a just and equitable nation. Thank you to everyone who has made this institute possible, and I wish you all the very best for tonight's launch.
It's bad to miss your cue. Fortunately, the Chancellor is not here to chastise me. I'm incredibly excited to join my voice in all of the voices that have welcomed you here tonight. I want to acknowledge where we're meeting today on the lands of the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people and pay my respects to elders past and present of this place. I want to acknowledge all the other First Nations people in this room and who are joining us remotely. There's something extraordinary for me about being back in Australia after 30 years living overseas and getting to call the names of the places I am. I realised in the 30 years I lived in America, I didn't call the names of the Lenni Lenape, or the Mashantucket Pequot, or the Algonquin, or the Iroquois, or the Anishinaabe, or the Shoshone Bannock, or the Alawan, and I think of all the places where that silence is something quite extraordinary, and what it means to be in a place where I get to say and acknowledge the names of the places we find ourselves is for me an extraordinary part of what it means to be here and what we're responsible for. Late last year, before I became Vice-Chancellor, one of the extraordinary students in the school I was directing was finishing her first part of a PhD, which is when you stand in front of a community of scholars and talk about what you're going to do. And she acknowledged where she was, and at the end she said, I think we're in a moment of time when it's not enough to acknowledge anymore. We need to commit. We have to commit with our work and our intellect and our whole person to a world that is different than the place we find ourselves in. And for her, that was a commitment around social justice and equality and the very issues this institute is dedicated to. And I think she and I are incredibly pleased and proud that we get to have this moment together in this place. The Chancellor talked a little bit about the Australian National University, and I want to add my own voice in thinking about why this is a good place for this to happen. The Australian National University is young for this country, young for a university in this place. It was born in the immediate aftermath of World War II by a collection of men who believed the world should be different than the place they found themselves. They thought that this university should do one thing and one thing only. They believed that it, more than any other place in Australia, was responsible for generating knowledge with which to build and rebuild the world wisely. Nugget Coombs, who would go on to be the Chancellor of this university much later, declared that he hoped this place would be the powerhouse of social reconstruction. And when I think about that phrase and I think about this institute, I think there can't be a more perfect combination. Because if we are really going to construct and reconstruct society, we need to do that firmly aware of where we start, firmly aware of who should be in the room, and firmly aware that the society we are building needs to be profoundly different than the one in which we currently find ourselves. And so the powerhouse of social reconstruction, designed to create the knowledge with which to build wisely, feels like the perfect place to be home for this institute and its whole agenda. And I'm so very pleased that this gets to happen now. I also know, however, that it's never enough to say those things. You have to write them down, So I'm glad there's a report because they're hard to get away from. And then you have to record it in the history books. And so we've had photographers all day long. We've had lots of people talking. And I did something really sneaky. So when I became Vice-Chancellor in January, I cleaned my office. That wasn't the sneaky bit. And in the cleaning, many things were unearthed. And one of my lovely colleagues, who I know is somewhere in the room today, realised that I was interested in old things. And he produced out of a drawer this book, which reads the Australian National University Visitors Book. And I think when we first got it, we thought we should probably put it in the archive along with all the other old things we had found. But when I opened this book, I discovered that it had been signed by the people who visited this university. It had been signed by crown princes and princesses, by visiting presidents of foreign universities, by dignitaries, and by a collection of Australian prime ministers. Menzies, Whitlam, Malcolm Fraser, Bob Hawke. Hawke was the last person to sign it in March of 1984, 40 years ago. And then the book went into a cupboard. And it came out this January. And so I have committed myself to turning up like a stalker and asking people to sign my book. A bit like being 12 again. Will you give me your autograph? Of course, the virtue of being the Vice-Chancellor of the Australian National University is you can get some excellent autographs. So in the last 2 months, that has included the Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea, the Prime Minister of Malaysia, the Prime Minister of Vietnam, and the President of Peking University. I was feeling pretty smug. And then I thought about today, and I looked back in this book, and I realised that the only women that are in this book signed it as someone's wife. The Crown Princess, the wife of Sir Zelman Cohen, the wife of Sir Ninian Stevens. And I thought to myself, it's 2024. I think I can do better than that. And so I fronted June and Julia, and I went, will you sign my book? And it makes me happy to know that 40 years from now, someone will find this book and discover on a page in March 2024 that 2 women signed this book as their own human beings, not wives to anyone, emancipated and whole, and that they signed with their names in their pen. And there is something for me about that that feels right and appropriate. And as I said to June, while that feels right and appropriate, it feels also kind of extraordinary to me that it's 2024 and I have the first woman of a First Nation to sign this book. To be really clear, it won't be the last. So I want to say thank you to all of you for being here, because I know what it takes to bring something into existence is never a single person. It's always a collection of people. And that whenever we do things brave and hard and important, we need friends and family and sisters and aunties and grannies and all the people who hold us and care for us and feed us and occasionally nag us and remind us to call our kids and eat and get Auntie Matilda home. All of those things matter. And we never do these things alone. And so I can't think of a more perfect way to launch this institute than with a room full of people who care about each other, who care about June, and who care about this topic. So thank you so very much for being here, and thank you for doing this with us.
Well, thank you to Julie Bishop and to Vice-Chancellor Professor Bell. As mentioned earlier, and many of you here have been a part of the journey, the Wiyi Yani Thangani project has been a colossal 7-year endeavour. It started as a national consultation process with over 2,000 women and girls from across the continent, resulting in the landmark Wiyi Yani Thangani report, and progressed to amplify the report's findings, advocating for implementation through a First Nations gender justice systems change lens. In May last year, Commissioner Oscar and the team hosted the first ever national summit for First Nations women and girls, held just down the road at the National Convention Centre. Over 4 days, the summit brought together 900 women and stakeholders to advocate for our rights and lives and endorse the next steps for the project, the reason why we're all here now. We'll share that short video to reflect back on this incredible journey. And then when that's finished, I would like to invite the Honourable Linda Burney, Minister for Indigenous Australians, to the stage to share a few words. Thank you.
I'm June Oscar. I'm the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Social Justice Commissioner, and I'm the first Aboriginal woman to come to this role in 30 years. As the first Aboriginal woman to be appointed to the role of the Social Justice Commissioner, I am acutely aware of the need to protect, uphold and realise the rights of our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Women are the ones that keep families together, and so therefore it's critical that we support women in their roles as nurturers, as providers. And it is women that encourage and continue to mentor and give confidence so that young women grow to become confident women in their roles into the future. I firmly believe that the strongest voice, the voice that provides us with solutions and the best possible pathway forward, is the voice of lived experience. That is why in 2017, the first thing I did as the Social Justice Commissioner was to launch the Wiyi Yani project, meaning women's voices in my language, Bunaba. Thank you, Chair. Distinguished guests, I am Australia's Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Social Justice Commissioner. Since February this year, I've been travelling across Australia to hear directly from Indigenous women and girls about their strengths, challenges and aspirations for change. This project is called Wiyi Yani, which means Women's Voices in my Bunaba language.
Wiyi Yani is a women's project that is happening now. I am so privileged and I'm very, very grateful to have the opportunity to be the ambassador for this project.
I'm very excited about being part of this project, and I'm grateful to have been invited to be an ambassador, because I have long felt that women coming together, forming collaborations and networks is an unrecognised resource, because when we do come together collectively, we bring vision, compassion and logic. I believe that the conversations that are planned for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women nationally will see new strategic directions and actions that will impact on Australia for many years to come.
One of the important and key areas that we needed to also include in this national engagement were the voices of women in the Torres Straits.
With education comes knowledge, with knowledge comes power, power to speak and be heard. Because sometimes we can speak, but we're not being heard. So it's good that you learn to do that, maintain your culture, know who you are in the Miriam structure, your place there, but at the same time, show my daughters, show my nieces that we're more than just mothers. We can do much more than that.
The women I meet are strong and resilient. They tell me that they want to have a say in decisions that affect their lives, but they also tell me that their voices are still not being heard about their ideas for solutions. One of the pillars of the candidacy of Australia for the Human Rights Council was to advance the human rights of Indigenous peoples. I encourage the Australian government to show leadership, committing to the implementation of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples in Australia, and supporting constitutional reform which delivers on the aspirations of our people for self-determination and freedom from discrimination.
My great hope for this project is that when all the voices that are shared around this nation are brought together and presented to government, that they are finally heard, so that we can actually have a future that doesn't necessarily look like what we've done in the last couple of decades, where the voices were ignored.
So welcome everyone to the launch of the landmark report, Wiyi Yani Thangani, Women's Voices, Securing Our Rights, Securing Our Future 2020 report.
I believe it is this report
armed with the voices of our women and girls, that has to be an unstoppable force. Wiyi Yani sets it out clearly. We resolve issues of disconnection by reconnecting, by seeing the world in its fullness again and not divided into fragmented parts. So my message to First Nations women and girls everywhere, and carried throughout this report, is aim high, be ambitious, and know that your actions don't just matter, they are pivotal in making the world of tomorrow the world we want, absolutely deserve, and have a right to. I'm excited to see all of these women who will share in this space for the next week, and to reconnect with so many of the women I met with during the consultations.
To bring everyone together in a shared space, hear about the work that women are doing on the ground and the incredible initiatives and organisations that they're leading. I'm just so excited to hear from all the women and to be in a shared space with one another.
This is an incredible moment for the future. It's the culmination of a lot of work. Obviously, there's been years of consultation leading up to the report. This summit is the culmination of that. But really, we see it as a springboard for what's to come.
Being able to explore and understand what our priorities are for us as First Nations women. Where do we fit? How do we exercise our rights? How do we exercise the things that are natural within us as really strong, matriarchal Black women? That is what this work represents. It will represent strength.
One of my favourite quotes is this: "May we be people that plant seeds which grow trees in whose shade we may never sit under." And when I think about this summit, and when I think about what these women are doing, these pioneers, these trailblazers, they've been at this for a very long time. And the seed that they're planting and the trees that they're helping nurture to grow, they're not just going to influence our generation, but 7 generations into the future. And so when I think about the work that they're doing, this is imperative work, and this is legacy work, and it's generational changing work. And so I'm really excited to see, I guess, the legacy effects of what this is going to do for Black women all over this nation, and how it's going to continue to inspire and empower Black liberation, our sovereignty as First Nations women, and how we're just unstoppable. We're going to keep flying forward.
Australia doesn't have a national framework that responds to First Nations women and girls, and this is our opportunity to make that happen. And so I'm really looking forward to bringing all of our voices together, developing this framework and setting up the First Nations Gender Justice Institute.
So it's critical that we have mechanisms in place such as the National Framework for Action, which the Institute will be guided by. So the Institute will provide a mechanism for the continued presence of our voices on the things that matter.
We know that we need the women on the ground in all of those different communities, in their different roles, in their different sectors, to be the people leading change. The work and the continued conversation out of the summit will be one that we see show up in a whole range of different places, and I think that the Gender Institute is going to be well positioned to support that moving forward.
Well, I hope that this is a beginning point to the future years of strengthening our presence, strengthening the voices of our women and girls, and creating strong leaders for the continued advocacy and change makers that we really need to see leading. We're certainly ready, and now we're putting all of this into action.
Very tall stage. Belam, Umbul, Nanawal, and Nambre, Yidamara, Naju, Bira, Yang, Barang. In the language of my people, the Wiradjuri, I pay my respects to the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people and honour their custodianship and care for country. I extend this to all First Nations women here tonight, and thank you, Auntie Matilda. I wasn't here, but I know that you did the welcome, and I have seen you do welcomes many times, and I know it would have been fantastic. And thank you, Larissa, for the invitation. I'm sorry I'm very late, everyone, but and Julia Gillard would be amazed that we get to leave Parliament at 6:30 these days, not like the old days, as with Julia Bishop. But I couldn't leave till 6:30. But I am so pleased to be here on this special occasion for the launch of Wiyi Yani. I'll just say Waya from here on in June, Institute for First Nations Gender Justice and Equality. And hello to all the people that are watching, that are live streaming. And thank you, June, for the invitation of inviting me to say a few words tonight. I do acknowledge Julia Gillard, whom I've known for many, many years, of the chair of the Global Institute for Women's Leadership, and obviously Julie Bishop, who I think sent a video message earlier, and Vice-Chancellor Professor Genevieve Bell, who the last time I saw was in one of the lounges at, I think, Melbourne Airport, as you do. But the Women's Project, the Women's Voices Project, is truly, truly groundbreaking. It has allowed the voices of more than 2,300 women from First Nations background and girls to be heard. Now that is something to really contemplate, because to be heard is to also it also gave the opportunity for women to speak their truth, girls to speak their truth. And if Australia needs anything at the moment, it's a bit of truth-telling. For many, it was the first time they'd been asked to share what was important to them, and I think that's extraordinary, particularly for many of you that have travelled around this country. The report documents First Nations women and girls' self-determined strengths, challenges and aspirations. It provides a blueprint, or as June says, a blackprint, to structural reform, which is really what we're talking about tonight. June and a group of women came to see me a couple of weeks ago at Parliament House. And not only is this an Australian first, but I think we heard that it was going to be a international first as well. So it's something that we can all be extraordinarily proud of in this country. It will carry forward the voices of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women and girls, as I said, and advance the understanding of our role, needs and aspirations. The project and the report tell us that First Nations women and girls are living within a system that perpetuates cycles of discrimination. And yet the solutions are sitting in our communities, and that is something for all of us to embrace. We need to listen and we need to trust what communities are telling us. The Institute will bring together First Nations researchers to design systemic change initiatives to improve life outcomes and deliver lasting change for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women. I want to also say that we know that the statistics are alarming, but tonight, as we saw in that video, is not about doom and gloom. It's about hope and it's about the future. And I think that we should all take a leaf out of that book and see Aboriginal affairs not always in the negative frame, but actually in the positive frame, because there is so much positivity out there. Yes, the referendum was devastating, but you know what? You get up, you shake yourself off, you look for the silver linings and you move on, and this is a great example of moving on. Tonight, we look forward with optimism to the establishment of the Institute, which will harness the aspirations and strengths of First Nations women. These women, our mothers, grandmothers, aunties, sisters, and children, as we saw in the video, are the backbone of our communities. They are strong, caring for our kids, families, and country. The Institute will continue to listen to and champion the voices of First Nations women and ensure that our ways of knowing and doing from the foundations of solutions and initiatives that respond to the needs of First Nations women and girls. And that, my friends, is the trick. Finally, I would like to take this opportunity to thank June Oscar for her incredible work as the first Aboriginal woman in the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Justice Commissioner role. I had the privilege of attending the summit that you all saw, and it was just so inspiring to be around 900 First Nations women in May last year. You could tell I was in Canberra, couldn't you? There was all this beautiful light clothes, and suddenly June had her hands in her pockets, I think. But it was just such a wonderful, wonderful exercise. During your term, June, you have been strong, passionate, and a passionate advocate, and you have taken so many women and girls along the journey with you. I'm so pleased that the next Aboriginal Social Justice Commissioner is also going to be a woman. Her name is Katie Kiss, but she has big shoes to fill, June. Thank you for all you've done, and I am looking forward to continue working with you and the Institute. Now, tonight, I'm not quite ready to speak about money, but listen to my last sentence carefully. And I look very much forward to being able to share some positive news in the near future. Thank you.
Well, thank you to the Honourable Linda Burney and that incredibly cryptic message you gave us. But thank you also for your leadership and the grace with which you continue to advocate for our rights. It's always an honour to have you with us. So I'm now joined on stage by the incredible Dr. June Oscar AO and the amazing, the Honourable Julia Gillard AC. So I feel like I really don't have to introduce you to this crowd, but I'm going to anyway. Auntie June Oscar, so inspiring, has spent decades leading significant social change movements on the ground and advocating in the national and international arenas for the cultural rights, health and well-being of First Nations women, children and their families. It was lovely in that montage to actually see that you do that nationally, on the grassroots and internationally as well. In 2017, as we've been celebrating tonight, she became Australia's first woman to be the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Social Justice Commissioner, and making sure that that appointment was not tokenistic. She set out to elevate First Nations women and girls' voices as a collective for the first time since 1986. June will sit as the chair of the Institute, continuing to pursue and advance First Nations gender justice and equality in Australia. And then the Honourable Julia Gillard, AC, is the chair of the Global Institute for Women's Leadership at King's College London and at the Australian National University. Julia has also, of course, as the 27th Prime Minister of Australia, been the first and only woman to serve in that role, having a significant impact on Australia's economy and society, and I think notably and importantly calling out misogyny and gender inequality in Parliament, and I think what became an iconic moment for all women across Australia. And of course she remains a strong advocate for social justice and gender equality. So June, I'm going to start with you. You're in the hot seat first. We've talked tonight about how you've led the Wiyi Yani Thangani Women's Voices project at the Human Rights Commission for over 7 years. At the end of your term as Social Justice Commissioner, you've established the Wiyi Yani Thangani Institute and released the Change Agenda for First Nations Gender Justice to carry this work forward. So I wonder if you could start by telling us about this vital work and why this launch is so important. And I know we've talked a lot about launches tonight, but I don't know that we've officially launched it, so maybe you could do that too.
Okay, well, before I launch into the speaking, I want to say, Jalonguru maaninga Wiyi Yani grama yani, ngada yangara katangana wala ngara yanenge. You hear me speaking my language, Bonava. I say to you, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Matilda House, Yadara yanenge, ngangiyo amoy. Ngangi yano moy ngada joralendenge yanenge yolngaro. We are gathered here on your people's country, the people of before, the people of now, and the people that are coming. Ngada ye ingarango moy. This is your country. Thank you for having us. Thank you to all of you for coming, for being a part of this evening. I have prepared a few words for this question. Larissa, thank you very much for making yourself available and for yourself and Michael driving all the way down here and making time for us this evening. You're both very busy people and looking after family and those you love, and we thank you so much for making time. What an honour and a privilege it is to share this stage with yourself, but with this amazing woman that I've looked up to for so many years. And I just reminded her tonight, I first met you with Joan Kerner when you were first nominated for your seat, and it was at Emily's list in Alice Springs. And Joan turned to me and said, she's going to be our first Prime Minister. And how right was she? Julia, thank you. Thank you from all of us for the incredible sacrifices, the weight of the responsibilities you've carried on behalf of all of us, for being able to champion for those of us where our voices do not get through to those spaces. I want to thank you for being here tonight to co-launch the Institute with me. And I want to thank every one of you in the audience. You're all here at the official launch of the Wiyi Yani Thangani Institute for First Nations Gender Justice, and just wow, okay? We've launched it. You're here. you know, you have seen and heard already of so much of what Wiyi Yani Thangani is about, and Larissa, thank you for those introductory comments on the change agenda and the Institute. But put simply, we are here tonight, we are doing this work because of the voices and the vibrant lives, the resilience and the absolute determination of First Nations women and girls in all of our diversity. And sitting here watching that video, I said to Julia, 7 years, captured in about 10 minutes there, just almost brought tears to my eyes, remembering all of those conversations with all of those women and girls everywhere we went. And I'm just so privileged to have been in their company. So I want to also acknowledge the learnings that I've received from cis and trans women, lesbian, gay, queer, and those of you with unique and additional abilities. Thank you for teaching me and opening my eyes to your lived realities and what we can do and do better with ensuring your voices are in those spaces and influencing the change that we so desperately need to see. So as the first woman to be the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Social Justice Commissioner, and I thank Minister Burney for her support to me in this role, and to counter what Matilda House was saying, I'm not going to be the first and the last, because we have the amazing Katie Kiss coming into the role of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Social Justice Commissioner, and we celebrate Katie's appointment. But my commitment from the outset was to elevate the voices of our women and girls and ensure they would be heard loud and clear in Australia's halls of power and decision-making arenas. I've always known that our women's lives matter, to the weaving together and functioning of healthy, safe, caring and engaged communities and societies. Seen through the narrow frame of deficit, which we so often are seen through, as just statistics associated with victims of violence, our worth is not truly seen and valued by broader Australian society. The Wiyi Yani Thangani project, over 7 years now, has heard from thousands of our women and girls. And the 2,300 were just the face-to-face engagement opportunities. We received, over 300 submissions from women's organisations and key community-controlled organisations with their stories and their aspirations. Our engagement with all of these women and girls has given us a First Nations gender lens that explodes this narrow frame of the deficit. We are survivors, healers and nurturers, teachers, leaders, carers, business owners, CEOs, mothers and sisters and aunties, and the list goes on. What is more, it is our lived expertise and knowledges that are the solutions we need to transform conditions of deficit which causes the crises in our lives. I have always said to women, your stories tell a fundamental truth. We do not need to be changed or fixed. It is the Western system that dominates our lives, which must shift to reflect and embody all of who we are. Embody all of who we are. Our incredible uniqueness and abilities, and the world will be the better for it. All peoples, all genders, and the planet will benefit. And that brings us here tonight, women and girls raised through Wiyi Yani, that we needed our own space on the national landscape and a nationally coherent framework to affirm our strengths. Now, the Institute and the Change Agenda are a direct result of this call to action, to create mechanisms which elevates our voices to drive serious systemic change in our lives. And our time has come. The Change Agenda and the Institute combined are about supporting the innovative initiatives women deliver and want to create on the ground for generational health and well-being for our communities. We have no choice. We must do this. They are also mechanisms designed to shift structures, to inform policies and legislation, so that surrounding structures are not detrimental to our lives, but are being enabling. The Change Agenda defines the way forward on our terms, and the Institute will be a place where our evidence from the ground can help to create effective policies and change systems to further enhance our self-determination. So this launch tonight is so important because we are saying our women and our girls will never be invisible. We have incredible worth, and we are central to Australia's movement for gender justice and equality. And no better champion than the woman to my left working with us in ensuring that all of our voices as Australian women are heard and respected. So I'll leave it there, but I also want to reiterate just finally my heartfelt thanks to so many of you in the audience tonight who have made this happen. As the outgoing Social Justice Commissioner, I also just want to say a huge thank you to the Australian Human Rights Commission for supporting this work, for supporting me, for supporting my incredible and amazing team, the social justice team. And I acknowledge the President, Rosalind Croucher, who's here with us tonight. Thank you, Ros.
Thank you so much, June. It's a great segue to a question for Julia. Australia's first female Prime Minister and now Chair of the Global Institute for Women's Leadership. Based on your experience and from your perspective, why do we need First Nations voices centred in the gender equality movement, and why is the First Nations Gender Justice Institute needed?
Thank you very much, Larissa, for the question. Thank you for being here, and it's just a delight for me to join June at the launch of this institute, and what an event. Thank you to everybody who's made it possible. I very much view myself being here as the support act to the lead. I'm the band, you know, you get through before the main event is there, but it's just terrific to be here. I also want to acknowledge Auntie Matilda. Even when I was Prime Minister, I used to view myself as the support act to her Welcome to Countries, which were always so attention-grabbing. Lovely to see you, Linda, and thank you for being here. And to Genevieve and Julie Bishop, the Chancellor of ANU. It's just a delight to be on this campus, which is home to the Global Institute for Women's Leadership. Your question, Larissa, I think is summed up in the answer to it in one word, and it's a word that June used when we saw the montage before, and the word was intersectional. I think one of the things when we look back on the history of the women's movement that we can say and should analyse and think about very deeply is that the women's movement has not always been inclusive of all women. If we go back in the history of the struggle for things like voting rights, those struggles here and in many places around the world were not inclusive of all women. And we want to leave that past behind and to have a present day feminism and women's movement that understands intersectionality, that embraces all voices, that knows that systems of racism and exclusion compound with gender inequality, sexism and misogyny and those forms of exclusion in a way that means every change that gender equality requires is needed by all, and for those on whom the burden of racism falls and exclusion, the impact of colonialism, that unless we centre their experience at the heart of the women's movement, then we will be missing so much of what is needed to propel us forward, to propel each and all of us forward together. And so I think it's just so appropriate that at this university, both institutes, the one we're proudly launching tonight and the Global Institute for Women's Leadership, will be able to be at home here together to ensure that we're always taking that complete perspective. I mean, the old saying is not about us without us, and for too many generations and for too long, First Nations Australians and particularly women have been there required to tolerate the decision-making of others when their voices haven't been heard and haven't been included, and the Institute is there to help us change that for the future, and that will make everything we want to do for gender equality more effective.
Thank you. June, from all of your experience and your perspective, what does First Nations gender justice and equality mean to you?
Good question. It means everything. It encompasses all of our human rights as set out in the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and other connected frameworks such as the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW. Equality is fundamental. We should have equal opportunities to be all of who we are in this world. Justice is broader though. It's about how we self-determine our lives and encompasses living a full and just life across every aspect of existence, including work, education, health, housing, academia, everywhere. It's also about our knowledge systems and our cultural practices for First Nations peoples. It's how we have formed and sustained societies since time immemorial. Our knowledges and practices need to be recognised so we can create movements, so we can create the structures, so we can create the economies and institutions to heal from trauma. to be empowered and regenerate our societal frameworks. This includes things like delivering our maternal health practices, the songs, the practice, the foods, the protocols, the naming, all of these ancient knowledge systems that live within our women and families and communities and language groups and cultural groups that have sustained lineages from the creation of time to become the world's oldest continuous civilization on earth has got to represent something.
Yeah. I got caught up in listening to you, Auntie. Julia, you've been such a prominent advocate for gender equality, not just here in Australia, but in spaces around the globe. What are some of your reflections on the global gender equality movement, and specifically what's working and what should we be paying more attention to as we advance gender equality globally?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And there is good news, and I think it is important to share good news when things change. When I look across certainly the sweep of time of my life, but even the sweep of time since I was in politics, I think we can see here in Australia and in many other places around the world that things have substantially changed and in a better direction for women. There has been much more focus on women's inclusion in the labour force, much more focus on women's economic empowerment, more focus, particularly here, on systems of support for women who have caring responsibilities. The announcements even this week about paid parental leave, the additions to it are another step forward. More focus on women's retirement incomes. Many businesses are very focused on trying to ensure that they have diversity, gender diversity, all forms of diversity throughout their business, and are very careful about trying to make that difference. Great institutions of learning like this one also very much focus on diversity, equity and inclusion. So there are some green shoots around. But you knew there was going to be a but in this sentence, and there is a but in this sentence. But this is unfortunately a very easy age in which to foster division and partisanship and fear. We saw that in the Voice referendum campaign last year. We see it in the cycle of contemporary politics around the world, probably in its stark form in the US, but in many other places on our planet. And it means finding the collective will and engagement that we need to propel communities and societies to another round of inclusive change is getting harder and harder. And I think this does very much impact the treatment of women who end up in the public discourse, whether that's because they're in politics, whether it's because they've served in a position like Social Justice Commissioner, women activists, women from all walks of life who get thrust into the public gaze. What we know from contemporary treatment is that traditional media is likely to be more careful on how they report things about those women than media was when I was Prime Minister here in this country. But that social media is just a toxic sewer for women whose names are up there. and the alienation that comes with that as women look down at social media feeds and not only see threats that are nasty words in the online world, but they see a joining of the online world with the real world, and many women in public life would be able to talk about seeing on social media things like death threats alongside a photo of their front door. So people using social media to say, we know who you are, we know where you are. And all of the analysis shows that for First Nations women, for women of colour, that this toxicity is even greater. And so I think that requires us to do a lot of deep thinking about social media regulation, but also about community norms and attitudes so that we can find new ways of campaigning and engagement that help us find the collective will for the big change projects that still lie in front of us.
Thank you. There was some great green shoots and then you ruined it with a really, really big caveat.
Yes. Sorry about that, but...
Well, it's the reality, isn't it? And I just want to pick up on one element that you talked about in what you just canvassed there with Aunty June. Wiyi Yani Thangani highlights just how central care is to the lives of First Nations women and how essential this care work is for the health and safety of our families and communities. Yet this often goes unrecognised and undervalued. First Nations care work is a prominent focus area that you'll be continuing to take forward through the work of the Institute. Can you describe this a little bit more for us?
Thank you. Yes, an important point of conversation and acknowledgement. Of course, we see it, all of you see it. Our women are the backbone of our societies. They are the ones nurturing continuously families and constructing the frameworks of care. You know, when we talk about care, we're not just talking about the caregiving to children or elders or those with additional needs and abilities in our communities, but we open our doors to give counsel, to give mediation, to give reassurance, to you know, run organisations and businesses, help sit with people in our community to believe in the solutions they hold. There's never, for Indigenous women, switching off at 4:30. It doesn't happen like that. It just is a continuous cycle of caregiving. We provide all of this support and care, and we do all this whilst we are maintaining our extensive cultural obligations to ensure the continuation of vital knowledge systems as the first women of this continent who have inherited knowledge systems from mothers and grandmothers and great-grandmothers, people that have gone before. We carry the responsibility of those knowledge systems on every aspect of life. Just think of that. And it's true for all women, Indigenous and non-Indigenous women, that our care responsibilities are not just limited to caring for ourselves and our immediate. It is in the nature and the nurture of women that we are always, most times, taking on more. So for us as First Nations women, the knowledges that we care and carry and transmit to the next generations, that they, when they are ready to receive this, those knowledges teaches us how to look after kin and country, to understand ceremony, to understand protocols, to teach the children all of those responsibilities, not just to navigate this modern reality. We're teaching and imparting knowledge systems that are ancient. The first part of the history of this continent. Women in the audience I know tonight carry that responsibility. I see them in those places, in the ceremony places, preparing for the ceremonies. You cannot set a foot wrong in those spaces. You must stick to what the law has laid down. You can't go and create or recreate those knowledges. So it's a huge responsibilities to be educators and carers of generations of people who will inherit all of those knowledges. And, you know, we do that in such a way that we maintain the respect and the peace throughout our communities for our collective well-being. Our knowledges and Indigenous women's knowledges are absolutely vital to care work. But it's overlooked, sadly, by mainstream structures. The definition of care work looks very different for someone sitting within a system, within an institution that creates the rules of the game around what is deemed care work. I have heard directly from women who are providing care when their daughters aren't there. Their daughters may be in prison. They do not qualify for carers' payments. Today, this year, this month, I've heard that. This has got to change. And these women I talk about are women on age pensions and on sickness, illness pensions. But they're providing this care work as Indigenous women, guarding knowledge systems, transferring knowledge, but they do not qualify for carers' payments of these children. There is something absolutely wrong with the systems that have been created for us to operate and survive within. That system is so broken. So can I just acknowledge, when it comes to this focus of work for the Institute, this is a significant piece of research, but it's already happening. This Institute is collaborating with the Centre for Indigenous Policy Research here at the ANU, CAPA. Wonderful people are here tonight. And with the University of Queensland. This research is now available on the Wiyi Yani website. And look, I just want to acknowledge and thank all of those researchers involved in bringing this important issue to light. It's the first time research has seriously conceptualised our spectrum of care and quantified the hours we are involved in care. It goes far beyond the mainstream conception of care. It shows that our women are doing a huge amount of unrecognised care work that goes beyond the hours of many non-Indigenous women's hours spent on care work. Remember the clock doesn't stop at 4:30 for black women in this country. They also estimated that the market value of this work in an annual salary and is between $81,175 to $118,921. Women are not receiving this. And neither is it being invested into our societies. This is the underinvestment and devaluing of our care work. So this research and the future work of the Institute is absolutely vital in redefining care and providing the evidence to our policy makers on how we can better recognise and remunerate this work. Because we have a right to that. We have a right to fix this. So thank you.
Thank you. Julia, within Aunty June's really powerful words there, she articulated the pivotal role First Nations women have in forming the social, economic and ecological fabric needed to create the condition for lives well lived, and the benefit that this has to society as a whole. In your opinion, from your perspective, how does progressing an intersectional gender equality movement influence some of our biggest global challenges like climate change and environmental justice?
Once again, thank you for the question, and it raises such an important issue. All of the global analysis, whether it's from the UN, whether it's from the panel on climate change, the scientific panel that advises the climate change conferences, the major COP conference of the parties that happens, the last one just happened in November last year in the UAE, all of this analysis shows that the people who are on the front lines of climate change tend to be women and girls. And that is because they are the ones most at risk in extreme weather events. They've got the least capacity to pick up and move because of the care of children, the care of elders. They tend to be the ones doing the subsistence farming, which is undermined when weather patterns change in a way that means that farming is no longer viable. They tend to be the ones that do the gathering of water, and as water becomes a more scarce resource, then that impacts on them and their labour. And research that the Wellcome Trust, which I chair, a global charity headquartered in London which funds scientific research, we are now funding scientific research at the intersection of climate and health. And when we fund that research, what we find is that at the intersection of climate and health, the health impacts are disproportionately on women. So to take just one example of that, for communities that are exposed on a continuous basis to extreme heat and have got no ability to mitigate that extreme heat, they don't have access to energy and air conditioning and climate control measures the way we have in buildings like this one. The impact of that extreme heat means it is more likely that women will have low birth weight babies. Low birth weight babies are less viable, more likely to die in infanthood. It is those women who will be most impacted by rising salinity levels in the water because of the extreme heat, which has got implications for kidney health, and the list goes on. And so when you hear that analysis and you take back to that principle we discussed before of nothing about us without us, how can we shape climate change solutions unless we are listening to the voices of women, in these situations and circumstances, whether they be women, First Nations women caring for country in Australia, or whether they be women in other parts of the world who are on these climate change front lines. And there is more of a recognition now that these voices need to be heard in the international climate negotiations. But as you would see from the images that come across your TV screens when these big international meetings are held, there are levels of power within those international meetings. There are the leaders' meetings at the centre of it, and the photos of those leaders' meetings show you a room disproportionately full of men. And so we have to keep fighting to include all voices, particularly women's voices, in shaping what is, it's not dramatic to say, it's absolutely shaping the future of the planet we share.
Thank you. June, one of the things I've always loved about your leadership is that you're always hopeful about the future and the possibilities of generational change. Nationally, there have been roadblocks to progressing our rights. Julia Gillard and Linda Burney both mentioned the recent experience of the Voice referendum as an example of that. But what do you think happens next? How do we move towards the future First Nations women and girls aspire to and envisage?
Yes, what a blow that was. And I want to acknowledge everyone that supported the Indigenous peoples in that. The Voice was intended to be a national mechanism to enhance what was happening across the diversity of the regions and in communities. That was an opportunity. Those things it would have brought visibility to are still happening. There is the incredible work that's continuing and movements taking shape everywhere. So we haven't stopped. We're reeling from yet a significant lost opportunity for us as a nation. When I think about what's happening and, like I've heard other Indigenous people say and non-Indigenous people say, we pick ourselves up, dust off, and we keep going. Wiyi Yani is one of those things. And in many ways, it sets out to do something similar to the Voice, which is to elevate evidence from the ground to the national level, to help inform structural conditions. So I feel this is a time to regather around the critical mechanisms that we have created to make the large-scale generational changes we want to see. I also think the Voice referendum tells us that now, more than ever, we need nationwide, inclusive truth-telling that brings all Australians together to understand our entwined shared histories and the future that we want to construct together. Why are we scared of that? Because we would have had a mechanism that would have helped us to get there as a bigger collective. But I believe that women can lead the way to unite everyone from every background. And I'm not trying to say that you blokes are incapable. You stand with us and you support us. Sometimes it's a job where you recognise who's the best person for it. It's these principles that we bring to our interactions of inclusivity, embracing one another, the depth of exploration, the consideration of other perspectives, and a desire to create cohesiveness that we need for the truth-telling process. And we're all dealing with all different levels of deep truth-telling in our own families. We need to share from that place of strength and healing in giving others the courage to do so as well. So the more spaces we can create for dialogue, for exploration and for collaboration, the better. That's what we need to create, or co-create, I should say, a wise future for Australia that is inclusive, that is just, and that is equal for all of us. And the Institute is one of these spaces, a vital space where First Nations women and our philosophies are at the heart of leading change and systemic shifts that can seriously contribute to Australian nation building. They're just some thoughts.
Julia, there have been some major commitments made in Australia to progressing gender equality, particularly with the recent release of Working for Women, the Australian government's strategy to achieve gender equality. How important are these commitments? Where do they take us? And how do we translate commitments into meaningful action and change?
I've been delighted to see the commitments that have been made and this real focus from the government on gender equality, on women's economic empowerment. And I know that this is an agenda that is close to the heart of many of the leading figures of the current federal government, including most notably the Prime Minister. So I think we do have a government that understands that the levers that are in its hands about the universal platforms that go up to make our tax and transfer system, that underpin our benefit system, our childcare system, that this is a government that is big-hearted enough and smart enough to think about how to use those platforms for change and to think about how to open space to then buttress and support and customise that change locally, because in every community, one size won't fit every circumstance, and clearly for Indigenous women there will be a set of other measures that may be more appropriate for their lives. So I am full of faith and optimism and enthusiasm about that. It isn't easy, but I think it is possible. What worries me over the longer sweep, the cycle of politics, and here I'm thinking not only of our own nation, but thinking very broadly right around the world. We've seen the rise of discord, of popularism, of, sort of so-called strong men leaders seeking to profit by dividing societies. That division has been done in a number of ways. It is often based on race, but we do know that some of the populist right-wing governments have also used gender very, very clearly to mobilise their base. I mean, we see it happening in places like Hungary. We will see it, I think, and we're certainly seeing it on reproductive rights in the US, and we will see it manifest in many more election cycles over this year, which is a huge year of elections, and in the years to come. So it does concern me that, you know, gender equality measures could be right at the fighting edge of partisanship. Not something that is supported by both political parties with maybe some variations about method and timing, but right at the ugly edge of partisanship. And I think that's something for us to watch out for here. And as we see election cycles around the world and some of that manifest, to learn from the best campaigning strategies to make sure that gender equality doesn't end up there in that really partisan ring. One of the things that we do at the Global Institute for Women's Leadership is an international polling survey which we release each year around International Women's Day. It's a polling data set done by Ipsos, a big global polling company, in more than 20 countries, and we've tracked over 5 years now trends in gender equality and community attitudes to gender equality. And what you can see in those trends is a hardening of community attitudes, particularly and disappointingly amongst young men who are unfortunately likely to say in answer to a question like, has gender equality gone too far? Are men being asked to do so much that they're now being discriminated against? Not the majority of young men, but a significant slice of young men are saying yes to those kind of questions. So that's telling you that this very hyper-partisan politics could find a receptive audience amongst young people, where we often assume that young people are just inherently more progressive than the generations that have gone before. So I think, you know, even as we see the cycle of elections and politics play out around the world, we've got to be thinking now about how to best include men, young men in particular, in the gender equality conversation, best harness different models of masculinity than the models of masculinity that are being sold online by toxic influencers. And best get a resonance to what I very deeply believe, which is that gender equality isn't a project for women. Gender equality actually would herald a better world for everyone, because everyone would have more options, more choices about how they choose to navigate their lives if they were free of the stereotyping, the boxes, the branded names that we put on men and women, and the assumptions we make about who they should be in the world. And I don't think to date we've been good at that kind of inclusivity. I think that's a challenge for us.
The sad news I have for everyone is that we're not only out of time, we're over time. So I've got plenty more questions if we could have stayed here all night, but can you please join me in thanking June Oscar and Julia Gillard for their leadership, their work, and for sharing with us tonight.
And thank you, Larissa.
Thank you, Larissa.
The good news is that we're closing tonight with a very special artistic sharing from Punkalayara. Punkalayara is an intergenerational cultural transmission project developed in partnership with Big Heart and the women from Naluma. I hope I got that. Nalama. Thank you, Ani. And Yinji Bandi country. It's a mediation on women's stories. Punkalayara is an experience of beautiful visuals, sound and spoken words, and it celebrates ancient and contemporary stories of women's power where nurture, care and guidance are formed in the collective. So you can see why it is absolutely a wonderful and appropriate way to celebrate the end of this evening and this very special event. So the performance will close this evening. So this is the last you will hear from me, Gabaninda Yalu. It's been a pleasure to spend this historic evening with you all. So please join me in welcoming Punkuliala to the stage. Thank you. Yep.
Hi everyone, how you all feeling tonight? Nah, you mom can do better than that. This room full of aunties. How you all feeling tonight? Ooh, my gulia. That's better, my queens. Now I want to share a song with you. It's called Red Dirt Queens. Come on, jump in. How about I, Jarangali? Queens, we are strong and proud. We lift each other up when we're feeling down. We're role models, that's what we do. Looking out for country and our young ones too. We run on Ngura, swim in Bawa, sing to Wanya, listen to mother. We run on Ngura, swim in Bawa, sing to Wanya, listen to mother. Red Dirt Queens, that's who we are. We'll teach you about our country and our aunties in the sky. This is our home. We live together. We're never alone. Queens forever. Hi everyone. I'm Nina Allen. I'm Yinjabani and that's who I am.
And I'm Hannah. I'm Nina's little auntie, Hannah Phillips, and I'm Yinjabani too. That's who I am.
And we flew all the way from Ngaramangura.
That's Raven, Iramangurdi, WA.
When you say hello in Ngarama, you say Waiba. Waiba!
In our Yinjabani language, we say Wandiwa.
Wandiwa.
Thank you to the traditional owners for having us on your country, and Annie G and Oscar for inviting us tonight. We would like to tell you about ourselves and our project, Pungaliara.
Well, Roban is a small little town and family everywhere, so you can't get away with nothing.
It's a good little place. We got a Wundua, the river, bush, and I love going in country, seeing all the warm colors.
I wrote that song before for the women who inspire me every day. I've been making music and going out bush because it connects me to my people.
Us young girls made some films for the WA Museum with our nanas taking photos, dancing and performing.
Our kinship is woven like a basket. It helped us to build our confidence to be here tonight.
Our nanas, we work hard, get feedback from our aunties and nanas. They show us what it's like to be leaders every day.
Yeah, they're soft, but powerful. Mark around, let's introduce you to them. Well, you already know me. I'm Nina, I'm the boss of this show.
Wandiwa, Ngayondini is Michelle Adams. And I'm Injibari. Nina is my niece, and I am Hannah's little big sister.
Wandiwa, I'm Mirgain Shireen Wally. I am Injibari, and I am Nina's mum, and Hannah is my niece.
Waiba, Ngay Bimbi, Sam Walker, Lala Mamanga. I'm also Nina's auntie, and Hannah is my bungali.
Now you might have got all that. I would also like you to introduce you to our sister Kia, who is from the east.
Hello, my name's Kia McGrady. I'm a Yugambeh woman, and these women here are my sisters.
This is Nana. She was my daughter and I was her little mom.
We are here tonight to acknowledge Nana, our senior Injibandi elder, our song woman, our Jara, our Injibandi queen. Sadly, she passed on Christmas Day. She shared Ngoluman Injibandi stories through Bongaliara, teaching our young girls, our Guringali.
Now tonight, we'd like to share some of that with you all. In honour of our Jaras, our senior women, and supporting our goodies.
But we can only show you a little bit tonight. Because this is a woman's project, we gotta keep it a little mysterious, innit?
Women! So complicated. Nah, we're just keeping you up on your toes.
Irgain and Bimbi are my bungalis, my sister-in-laws. This is a really important relationship in our kinship system. This is Bungaliara. This is a story for a woman. This is our power.
Welcome to Bungaliara,
sister-in-law dreaming story.
So you always say, Wandewa, Ura, I want to come in your country to be with you, and I really want to respect you and come to be in your arms.
I'm going back to the country. I'm going back to the country, and my mother nature is calling me back to the Mura. I went here in Murara. I just mommy Mura.
I am not a stranger. I belong to this river. You belong to me. We belong to each other. There was that time before the sounds of the first bundut. Heaven and earth were very close, bound together by a heartbeat, and the world was soft. They were learning times. It is now, it was then. Those sisters, they fell from the sky to earth. The strains of that first song, that beautiful call.
Punkaliara sisters,
the Mayari goddesses, together fell and emerged from the sea near Murujuga
to travel over Ngora,
to follow that call.
A lustful man,
impatient and fast,
chasing,
watching, behind trees,
pestering,
dancing. Want those sisters for himself. All of them for wives. Wonder that. Wonder what he would have done if he had caught them all. Would have had his hands full. That Gara?
He might have been the one running away.
Some people say it's because the sisters were too beautiful. Making that man crazy. Or maybe they were just minding their own business.
And doing what sisters do. Over Ngora they traveled, creating,
protecting as they were pursued, making those places where spirit babies come.
Ngora, soft and warm sand.
Hard and rocky earth.
Springs turn into pools. Pools turn into rivers.
Men's places, women's places.
The essence of creation lying deep in the water. The bawa with feet beating, yandi beating. Still the song sounds. Kanga Barina. 2 of the sisters, Pungali, were chased.
Gasped, frightened,
Fell
into the water at Yawajuna.
Deep down, they turn into anthills.
Up from those mounds came a tree.
A tree up to the moon.
There, those Bungali joined the sky again and found their sisters to flee once more, to follow that call.
looking down,
looking
back,
leaving behind.
The soft ripple of their breath across the deep fertile pools. The morning dew of their tears settled on leaves and Jami, the trail of their story in the sky. And a breeze, that breeze. And on they followed, the call and the song, journeying
together, never apart, strong and united, but away from country.
It was here, it was then, Angora was made.
Birthed by the ancestors,
bodies bound by love, brought forth the threads that bind us.
Our water places,
animal spirits,
plants and seasons,
seeds.
Created there at Yawajona, as the Bawa flowed, was Pungaliyara, where Pungali fell.
Where the Mungo rose, where the tree grew up to the moon.
Where our power speaks.
Our Mapan. Pungaliyara, a place of honey, plants, flowers, trees, seeds, a place for woman, made by the Mayari.
A baby-making place.
Dalu place. Safe place.
Swim there.
Wash there.
Sing there.
Deep in the Bawa is life itself. Puya, magora nyanda ngari, wanyari ngorai. Tula nyanda magora pani, warang no muna no. Kuka nyanda pani wanyari magora ngorai. Chili kan nyanda magora pani chiano. Mara. Nabani bandono, pangongo, maninga yando, magora. Wira nyen gada bani ngongo, mori manya da wani, cian. Cina nyen gada bani magora, Barabani panyu no maningai no ngora.
That there was a baby's prayer, a blessing from our nanas. When a baby is born, they get this blessing. So what do you more think about them stories before?
How's that Ngara chasing those sisters all over the place? Can't the ladies get any peace?
Yeah! Nah, he's right, you fellas. Some mob talk about dream time. Up there around Roban, we talk about when our world was soft.
That's how Bungaliara was made, by those sister-in-laws. For generations to come, our families lived there. The river was lifeline for everything. Got a picture of my mum with me in her ngalo, standing in that cold, sacred water.
The land was so alive.
You can hear it if you listen.
Our nanas in Roban have a song about that. Who's ready to learn some language?
Now, in English, it's listen, listen, listen. The country is talking to you. From the center, to my right, Injibandi mob. To my left, Ngaluma mob.
Here we go. You ready? Listen, listen, listen. Wanyari, wanyari, wanyari.
Wanyari, wanyari, wanyari.
Beautiful. Ngura, wanga, wa.
Mura, wanga, wa.
Country is talking.
You mob, listen, listen, listen. Wanyabari, wanyabari, wanyabari.
Wanyabari, wanyabari, wanyabari.
Country is talking to you. Ngora wangago.
Ngora wangago.
Beautiful.
Well done, you mom.
Now we're going to sing those phrases.
We're going to sing those phrases? All right. Sorry, Bungali. Here we go. Wanyari, wanyari, wanyari.
Wanyari, wanyari, wanyari.
Ngura wangawa.
Mura, wangawa.
Lovely.
Nyungalama mo. Ready?
Wanyabari, wanyabari, wanyabari. They can do better than that.
Ngora wangago.
Ngora wangago.
One more time.
Wangago.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
This crowd needs to wake up.
We're going to try to sing
great
those
so far.
phrases together. We'll cue you in. We're going to cue you in. That's good. Ready, Ngalama mo? Come on.
That's all right. Come on, your mom.
Come on, Ngalama.
Wanyabari, wanyabari, wanyabari.
Oh, that's good. What you reckon? We do it one more time?
One more time?
One more time.
One more time.
I'm ready. Anybody mo?
Wanyari, wanyari, wanyari.
One more time? One more time. Ready? Wanyari, wanyari, wanyamari. Ngora wangawa. Wow. Wow. That reminds me of my grandmothers. They looked after me when my mum passed. My family traces right back to Bungaliara. Their father is buried there. They were around my age when the government built the Harding Dam. They had 4 sacred choice places to choose between. In the end, the dam went over Bungaliara.
We have a word in our language. Wanga babarnigo.
Alive. When those sisters left together, they trailed their stories across the sky and sung them into the land. Yirandari. Their feet beat a rhythm, it beat through their bodies. The rhythm became song, song became dance, dance became ceremony, ceremony became songland. Country is about who we are, who we can be. Law, ceremony, kinship, galara, marriage, birth. All these stories, woven and living, sung into the mother. The Mayari soared on, but they left their lessons there. They said, stay together.
Safety in numbers.
Share what you have.
Don't be greedy.
Don't be selfish. All these lessons, woven and living, sung into the mother. Mother tells us where the jami and wandangali plants grow, the name of our Talungali and Dalungura, the places where Bawai, life itself.
The time to pick the garango, fire the plains, eat the ngargo.
Take what you need, leave what you don't. Our ancestors, the sisters, are here. They are in the mother, and the mother is in us. As morning becomes night and seasons flourish, plants burst forth, clouds rush over, fertile heat, power, moves and flows. In the mother is our power, and our power exists to steward her.
She whispers through our strong bones, streams, rivers through our bellies and hips,
sings words of joy from our mouths,
cries through our open eyes.
Mora! Our power is in the mother. How powerful is that Bungaliara place? Creation herself, lying deep in cool pools, breath, breeze. How powerful our right to be embraced, to swim in her deep pool, to dream in her cool shade, to pick our healing yummy, to ask for a spirit child. How powerful then was that Harding Dam, a great wall to hold the Bawa, a great wall sliced over country, over Bungaliara. How powerful the waters that chased her,
flooded her,
roared over her,
silenced her,
covered her,
halted her.
Her power rendered still, deep, deep under the power. Can't go there now to Bungaliara, the thread that binds us. A Dalo place, a safe place.
Swim there, wash there, sing there, Yoloa.
Everything's quiet now.
Maganai Dora? Well, she was fierce about that Harding Dam, using that water all day and all night. We used to sing out to her, "Goya Nana, stop wasting the power." She'd say, "That's my dam, that's my water."
We have a word in our language. Wangababanigo.
Wangabani. It means still alive, still living.
Nothing ever dies. It just transforms.
On this project, we talk a lot about power. Can I share some of that with you tonight? There are two kinds of power. Power that connects, power that separates. Good power, bad power. I have known both kinds. The closest Injibandi word to power is Kangamara, someone who holds learning, someone whom you respect. I think about my mother. I'm 12 years of age. I can see her there in my mind. She is sitting there at the Harding Dam during the fight to protect that place. Our lands had begun to hold new value for the white man. Mining towns were springing up everywhere. Needed more water to live. Our precious water, suddenly everybody's business. The fight for the Harding Dam to stop the flooding of our sacred sites, our women's sites, Bungaliara. There was no money at stake here then for our people. This was before native title. They were fighting for the power that they knew was there. They were fighting to contain, maintain, and conserve. Mum, she is sitting there with her elders, family, 50 to 60 people, pens, papers, maps everywhere. She is talking, she is translating. As a daughter of an Aboriginal woman, growing up in that way, I saw the value of good power. I watched my mother weaving threads by holding something big with others. As women, we draw power from the past and our future. On country, you can see it and you can feel it. Memories that are all around you. The trees and pathways, footprints that once were walked by your grandmothers and theirs before them. That power is connectedness. It's a feeling. You just know it's there and you gravitate towards it all the time. It makes you feel so small. To understand true power is to know that it's not supposed to make you bigger nor louder. And this is where we should understand that the white man's ways is to consume. But we, as Indigenous people in this world and in our hearts, we weren't created to consume things. We were made to steward something bigger than us, for us to love it and for it to love us back. When our lives become highly political, the struggle to maintain yourself as a woman is really difficult because it's transactional. And we will seek power in places where our power is not valued, in systems and structures designed to separate us. For my relationship with you now is what you can get out of me and what I can get out of you. We break the flow. Our kinship, our relationships are our power. They're an instruction and a gift from the mother. It is based on balanced love and respect. They are there to hold us together. The responsibility I have didn't just arrive with me. It walked with my grandmothers and theirs before them.
I have a granddaughter now, and the world needs to open up to her. So I say to her, you are Ngora, you are a living, breathing part of this country. And then I draw on what my own strength is. It's the thread weaving back to Bungaliara. One Gababani, we are still here. There are women and sisters all across the country still holding their duties, being held by the women in their communities and their sisters. That's what gives me strength, you know. And at any given moment when I have negative thoughts, I hear these voices going, you know who you are. I am Injibandi.
I'm Injibandi. I am Ngaloma.
I'm Injibani.
I'm Injibandi. Sorry about that.
Who I am.
Indanari bawa gali malu malu tangu yandanya ngalalamba bawa bandi ngalalamba bawa bandi ulu mari wangu wanbina ura guru dari warariba manda malu malu ya manda unu malu malu